Yeah, I got myself a burnt light. I guess that's not the end of the world. So I run over down to the store to get some new bulbs, and I come out with some LED ones. Still in the box here. The benefits that I'm seeing with this, these were a little more expensive. I think I had the option to get them before, but I think these are like 50 bucks for the two. So obviously, you know, probably the first time I saw that, I was, you know, like a year and a half ago, I was like, no, I'll get the cheaper ones. So what I've learned with the cheaper ones is the first 3 odd months I was telling people to wear sunglasses because they're that bright, but really realistically throughout the life of the bulbs, they've been just getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. I really don't know how well the camera's going to pick up on this, and I know one of the lights is out, but there's really not enough light going on in this system. So I added this light, as you're already aware, primarily so I have something I can maneuver around and put on new seed growth. So some other benefits too is these bulbs here, they're 24 watts each, so that's actually a lot higher than I thought I remember when I got them. But needless to say, these new ones are 21, so it's like a 12.5% light savings. Plus they have 5 times the shelf life, or 5 times the life, and they're not going to dim out over time. They'll either work or they won't work. You know, maybe over time the odd light will start to burn out, but you know, having one of these little diodes burn out is pretty trivial in the end. So I'm doing some fish maintenance. I've had those 2 fish deaths. The first one was, you know, really left me confused as to what happened. The second one had very similar symptoms about a few odd days later, and that definitely caused some alarms. And so I did some water tests. You know, I found that everything's looking really good. In fact, actually, my nitrates and nitrate levels are at 0, which tells me I need to do more feeding of the fish to feed my plants. My ammonia levels is really nice, but here's the kicker. My pH is at 8.2. Now, that's that analog color chart. It's not perfectly accurate, but it is the first time that I've seen, you know, more, right? And what's happening is I've been using tap water. And over time, tap water evaporates, and the plants aren't taking the calcium carbonate out of the water fast enough, so it's building up in the system, and that is increasing this. So assuming, let's say this is 8.2, that is definitely, as far as I think, a little too high for my system. I really, ideally would like to get this at 6.8, but even at a 7.5 or you know, like 7.4 is kind of how I've had it. I was really comfortable with that. There wasn't going to be nothing I was going to do about that, but you know, this is definitely a concern. So I'm going to do some water changes over the next month or so, probably on a weekly basis or so. You know, 2 buckets out, 2 buckets in, and see where that goes. But the long-term best solution would be to get a reverse osmosis water system. I haven't really talked to my landlords about it. There's parts of that idea that I'm uncomfortable with because it would mean that I would have to do some plumbing in here, which mean the systems that I'm familiar with, we'd have a separate tap, and there would be a tank under the sink, and basically be holes and stuff. Now, from what I gather with what I've talked to about my landlords about things, I don't think they'd have a problem with it, but it's still something I'm not comfortable doing because, you know, let's say in a year from now I move out, there's now holes in the sink, or I'd have to leave the system behind or something. And that's why I have this zero water system. Now this technically works, but the cost per liter is extremely high, and the system is very slow. That filter takes forever to push water out. Another observation that I've made when cleaning out the tanks today, and I'm not going to get in there and show it off, but I'm finding that this little sock thing doesn't really work as I'd hoped. Basically, there's plenty enough time for sediment to get in there and break down and go through the filter and just end up in the tank anyway. So what I'm thinking about doing is trying to figure out a way where let the sump tank be the collection pit, and then somehow figure out a way to separate the pump itself from it so it's not sucking up that dirty water. That will mean that I will have to clean it, you know, which isn't exactly part of the goal. I think there are better systems out there. There's swirl systems that I've read about, and I think that'd be ideal. But my system's just too small to incorporate something like that. So I may just have to suck it up and just do it the hard way, the manual way. But in a much larger system, there are ways to essentially minimize the impact of the maintenance, you know. But yeah, on another side note, these fish, the reason why I think they died was from a symptom that is called like drowsy or something like that. Basically, there's many causes for it, and that's what makes it really hard to figure out what is going on. But I've had these fat fish for a while. I just thought they were just maybe a little overfed. They're females, they're pregnant, and you know that was normal. But they were the ones that were dying. And if I were to look at some of these ones, particularly that one there, you know, are those the beginning elementary stages of, you know, concerns, right? So I'm hoping, and I don't know, but I don't know. All I can do is really monitor it. I don't really know what would be my best options. But again, you know, I think some of my issues are up here. You know, I'm not, you know, like this bucket's been basically dead for a year now almost. Like there's nothing significant that's been growing out of it. And then this bucket is just overburdened. I'm growing almost too much in there. And I'll admit, my system is not balanced. And if it was balanced, and it's possible to balance it, and that's what I'm trying to balance it with, it'll work rather quite well. But it's all the details. It's the right lighting, it's the right circulation, it's the right type of filtrations without, you know, over filtering, the right feeding schedule. Because that's another thing I'm thinking too. There's a possibility that maybe I'm under feeding them a little bit. That's really hard to do with fish. It's very easy to overfeed, so I don't think that's a huge problem. But I do see aggression in my pleco when they're getting underfed. And when they're underfed, you know, like there are scales missing. There are some issues, you know, that I'm seeing to suggest it's not perfect. But again, nothing extreme, right? Like, to improve the feeding would be like a subtle little change, but very easy to overdo that. Anyway, I think I'm rambling here. Alright, I don't know how well this is going to look on camera, but here is pretty much a comparison of my three lights. My eyeball says they're pretty close. The LCD is brighter, although this bulb one is actually probably even brighter yet. Alright, that's with the LED lights in there. I mean, this is obviously just kind of my first impressions of this, but I think, and probably combined with this because of that too, like there's a lot of light in here. Like I'm looking through the foliage and there's definitely a lot more light going on in here. So this is an upgrade. This is an improvement.